Our group will be analyzing the Volkswagen emissions scandal. The scandal, commonly known as Dieselgate, occurred when the United States EPA revealed Volkswagen's violations of U.S. regulatory Clean Air Act standards. It was found that Volkswagen had rigged their emissions tests with a defeat device. The defeat switch knew when testing was occurring through various parameters such as position of steering, speed, etc. A switch controlled the diesel output, which made the NOx trap more efficient, and as a result produced low nitric oxide emissions. But the results differed when it came down to the driving performance on the road. The emissions on the road were 40 times more than what was allowed by regulatory standards. Volkswagen admits to having installed the defeat switch on up to 11 million cars, even though not all were recalled. In terms of timeline, the CEO of Volkswagen resigned, but declaring being not aware of any wrongdoing on my part. In December, Volkswagen said only a few number of workers were involved in the scandal. In March, it was revealed that the CEO had reviewed memos about the scandal, but insinuates no one whistle-blew publicly. So the question arises, who is to blame for this? And did the engineers involved fulfill their ethical and legal duty? These are the sections that were violated, some more seriously than others. Examining the more serious ones, Section 72(2)(a), negligence, because the engineers act to avoid solving the problem of emissions above regulatory standards by designing to a system to cheat the emissions test. Sections 77(2)(d) and G go hand in hand, as the Clean Air Act was violated while the engineer's responsibility was to ensure emissions met regulatory standards. From sections 77(1)ii and 77(2)i, their fidelity and welfare to the public and the environment was violated, as their advertisement of an eco-friendly vehicle was a dishonest claim. And finally, from section 77(8), the engineers should have exposed the company for their unethical actions of developing the defeat device. The decisions come down to 5 options: doing nothing, which would result in later exposure and engineers held for their negligence; discuss with the supervisors, and if they are unresponsive, remind them of the newspaper tests, and if there is further inaction from the supervisor, move up the chain of command to the CEO. If nothing gets done by approaching the CEO, the next move would be to report to the PEO, which risks violating company disclosure rules and potential loss of employment. Finally, the least preferable option would be to whistleblow to the public. The best decision would be to fulfill their duty to report by moving up the chain of command and reporting to PEO as a last resort. Analyzing the law aspect of this case, we have the defendants, Volkswagen, and the plaintiffs, the consumers, and the general public. The legal precedents are to be analyzed for each category of law. That is, for tort, we have Donahue v. Stevenson and Wolverine 2 v. Miranda and Arthur Little. For environmental law, we have the Rylands v. Fletcher and Smith v. Inco. Lastly, we have Derry v. Peak for misrepresentation. Each precedent contains a short explanation. For example, the Smith v. Inco causation does not equal correlation means that the plaintiff must provide concrete evidence that defendant's conduct was explicitly the cause of damages. In tort law, there are 3 main principles that need to be addressed, which are the duty of care, breaching the duty of care, and essentially the results of breaching that duty of care. The cheat devices created by Volkswagen allowed the company to formulate false data in order to legally pass environmental regulations, inevitably leading to financial injury. The Paris Agreement is an agreement within the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change dealing with acts such as greenhouse gas emission mitigation. Volkswagen went severely over the standards of emissions, which went against acts such as the CEPA and EPA due to abnormally large amount of greenhouse gases the vehicles were actually producing, that of which Volkswagen was consciously aware of. Misrepresentation is a form of contractual law. Volkswagen was specifically fraudulent in their actions because they were aware of their statements being deliberately false. Ultimately, we are aware that Volkswagen lied and cheated on their emissions tests by creating a cheat device to fabricate praised environmental standards. They ironically launched a Think Blue campaign to title themselves as the most ecological, sustainable car manufacturer in the world by 2018, and easily went against the trust of the general public. In terms of the potential liabilities that Volkswagen faces, there are legal fees, fines that are set out by the government regulations, and the public can claim damages and dissolve their contracts with Volkswagen of any purchased vehicle. Under tort law, Volkswagen would be liable to the state had the incident not occurred. Thus, they'd have to pay punitive fees such as buyback of the vehicles and consequential damages such as legal fees. From environmental law, the defendant would likely be charged fines set out by government institutions. General punitive damages from civilians would likely not be won from environmental law due to Smith v. Inco, as it is very difficult to rule that Volkswagen vehicles themselves are the cause for lower air quality, property value, or increased health risks. Volkswagen would probably be held liable for these general punitive damages under misrepresentation instead, since their conduct can easily be proven as fraudulent and were intentionally trying to deceive. As a result, they are liable for all losses due to their conduct, whether they are foreseeable or not. A lump sum payment is generally given in class action cases such as this to expedite the process and compensate the plaintiffs. What really ended up happening was in April 2019, the ex-CEO and 4 other managers were charged with serious fraud. Eventually, in September of the same year, began a court hearing in a class action lawsuit for 450,000 Germans.